Yeah.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Robert McDowall. We are going to pick through the bones of the October 2024 UK budget. Robert, good to see you as ever.
And you as well, Tony. And
And
I'm not sure whether to laugh or cry.
no,
There we are.
it was dreadful, wasn't it? In terms of, it's supposed to be a budget for growth. I don't see any growth taking
Quite,
place, quite
quite.
honestly. And, from what
I,
I can
I,
see,
I, I, I don't see it.
they're trying to raise an additional 40 billion pounds in new taxation. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
It's a huge amount. Interesting enough, it's the second highest in modern times. Believe it or not, Norman Lamont back in 1992 or three, just after the Conservatives got back into power unexpectedly, had a huge tax raising budget, which was actually bigger than this if you adjust it in real terms. But yeah, yes, it's a huge rise, huge rise.
Norman, the green
Um,
shoots of recovery, man.
Absolutely, and I think they died before they sprouted. But there we are. Um, the only supporter that Rachel Reeves seems to have is the International Monetary Fund, that sort of self-perpetuating body, which should have been wound up when currencies floated back in 1971 or two. But these supranational organizations always find a purpose for themselves in life.
Now, she stated that she hopes to balance the budget in 29-30. Do you think that's a
Yeah.
feasible comment?
Well, well, what a coincidence, because that's about the time of the next election.
The-
um, well, look, she's had these. She's supported allegedly by some of these forecasts from this Office of Budget Responsibility, but uh, forecasts change periodically, as much because of external events. So
Hmm.
I suppose it's a question of trust and faith. Really, that's really what she's relying on.
I think the only thing that heartened me about the whole thing was the question of the compensation for the blood and also the sub postmasters. That was about all that I saw that was positive.
Yes, and it was positive, and those are good moves. And in fact, they should have been made by the previous government. But
Yeah.
I suppose that's history. But yeah, yes, you're absolutely right. I think the other thing is, of course, governments always like to get the bad news, what they hope will be the bad news, out the way early in their ministry. Perhaps unlike the states of Guernsey, which has had to deal with we may talk about that later.
Yeah.
Issues later than unexpectedly, but I mustn't divert.
Income tax still going to have that fiscal drag. Not going to be reviewed until 28, 29. So that means every year more and more people get drawn into tax, don't they?
That's right. And I remember as a young working man in the 1970s, it was exactly the same. That we were subject to this fiscal drag, which dragged on for 4 or 5 years, from sort of 74 to 79. So yes, it's a mirror of that, Tony.
National insurance, Robert, not going to go up, but it has gone up because they've clobbered the employer's contribution.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that seems to be where the big chunk is going to come from. And what surprised me most was the lowering of the national insurance thresholds to what, just over 5,000
Yeah.
or whatever. Admittedly, they've got this small business exemption and other small print stuff which will mitigate some of that, but it will inevitably lead to redundancies, more consideration on whether you employ people or not. It's a very regressive move, very stupid in my view.
So it's not all about getting the economy going, is it? That
No,
sort of move.
no, no. I mean, the there should have been more vigorous cuts to expenditure. but that isn't going to happen on the pretext that the government, as well as private enterprise, will need to invest in infrastructure.
Yeah.
But anyway,
There
we
we
shall
are.
see.
Fuel duty unchanged. Well, that's been unchanged forever, hasn't it?
Well, it has, and I don't think there's an appetite for a fight across the political spectrum on rises in fuel duty. Um, Theoretically, if we're moving to a more a greener environment, fuel duty should at some point become surplus
Mm.
to requirements. So it should be, dare I say, phased out. It's going to be a long time, but that one doesn't surprise me, frankly.
Bit vicious on the capital gains tax increases. Now, perhaps you can explain this to me because we're basically seeing the low rate, and I take it it's linked to income tax, is it?
No, 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 it isn't. It isn't linked to income tax at all. These are there are what you might call small realized gains and large
Okay.
realized gains, and so there are distinctions. I can't recollect In fact, the figures will have probably changed in this budget, but one has to go to what they call the red book for details. But there are small gains and larger gains,
Okay, so
and
so the small gains go from 10 to 18%,
correct,
and the
correct,
large gains go from 20 to 24%. That's not
correct.
no incentive there then.
Uh, no incentive there. And one of what we may come to it later. I think that may have an impact on some of the non-DOMs who are moving their assets out of the UK. But perhaps we'll come on to that
Yeah, yeah,
later.
that is on the list.
Yeah.
But you know, banging capital gains tax it's a disincentive to investment, isn't it?
It, it,
For everyone.
it is a disincentive to investment, and people will, I assume, unless people are desperate, they will hang on to to any unrealized gains. But of course, sometimes if you've sold a business or you're in a situation where you have to sell, and of course, there's capital gains tax on second homes and so on, and some people will be selling second homes in anticipation of the more extreme measures coming down on protecting rentals.
And of course, if you're a UK resident and you
Yep,
own a property on Alderney and you sell it,
yep. You
you're
will
you,
be
you're in for capital gains tax.
in for capital gains tax. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly right.
Corporation tax, they seem to say, remains at 25% for the duration of the Parliament. Well, that's quite a swipe in any case on the
It,
amount of profit, isn't it?
it, it is. I mean, obviously, there's a lot that's allowable under UK corporation tax legislation. Um, it's a bit on the high side, but again, something we may come on to later. But the OECD is looking for all jurisdictions to bring in a sort of minimum corporation tax of 15%. How long that will take, I don't know. But so it's not as high as some countries. It can be unpalatable, but there are a lot of offsets. So it's not quite as bad as it looks, in my personal.
So the bottom line's a bit lower than one would normally accept.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Okay. Understood. Now, as far as inheritance tax is concerned, that was a bit of a nasty on two bases. Number one, on pension pots.
Yep.
You know, where the annuitant dies and there's money left over, that used to automatically go to the estate
It,
with
it,
no
it, it,
inheritance tax
it did. That's right. And I suppose the moral is spend it all
before you die.
before you die.
But the really worrying thing is this question of the farmers, agriculture.
Yes, I mean, I've been reading and hearing a little bit about that, but this will impact small family farms. Obviously, land prices are continuing to go up, and small family farms are worth it can be 2, 3 million pounds, a few hundred acres, and
Yeah.
so on. We're not talking about vast country estates, and that will affect the future of small farming, and particularly what I say the more specialist farming, things like specialist food crops, fruit,
Yeah.
vegetables, and so on. So yeah, yes, that's an unpleasant one, and there are some mitigations, but I that wasn't really thought through very clearly in my view. One, of course, the other thing is that there are people allegedly buying land and farms now who are not farmers. They're not even hobby farmers, but they
Mm.
buy land as an investment. And I suspect that some of that may be intended to catch them, but it's not helpful to the industry at all.
No, and you know, the fact of the matter is that up until now, you've been able to pass it generation to generation,
Correct,
which is
correct.
important if you want to keep an agricultural industry going. All of these farms, Robert, they're asset rich and cash poor, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, they have perpetual loans, secured loans with the banks. The banks are happy to take the interest, and obviously the value of the land goes up each year, so they're quite happy about it. But yeah, farmers are not cash rich, as they will as they will tell you if you ask them how they are.
Well, they're never very positive, are they, when you ask them how they are? But
Yeah, never, never ask a farmer how he is.
I think it starts with pessimism as opposed to optimism, doesn't it?
Exactly,
Every
exactly.
time. But
Yeah,
there we
yeah.
are. I was quite surprised. I couldn't see anything in it about potentially exempt transfers. That seems to have stayed as was.
That's right. Again, I haven't had a chance to look at what they call the red book, the fine
Mm.
print yet, but I think you're right. There may be something tucked away in there, as there often is once you drill down below the headlines. But I agree. I've seen nothing on that at all yet.
So this is basically this is the concept where you can give money away,
Yeah,
um, but you're entrapped for 7 years on a
that's
tapered
right.
basis.
A tapered basis. That's right.
And if you die within the 7 years, you get clobbered for inheritance tax.
Yes, exactly. You can sometimes take out some expensive forms of insurance
Mm.
to cover this, but basically it's a dice with death.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to pick your time, no doubt about that.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, surprise, surprise, tobacco up, but
Yeah,
I'm sure you and I both like the old drink now and again.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure the penny a pint off is
Well,
going to
well,
make
that's
a lot of difference.
that's sort of gesture politics, of course, and I suppose it's intended to help I'll call it the craft brewing industry. That's probably how they'd like to pitch it. Tobacco keeps going up. Again, I think there will come a time when tobacco tax becomes pretty well
Mm.
surplus because of the reduction in consumption of cigarettes and tobacco. But that's a few
Well,
years ahead. But
well,
I don't see it's a pointless gesture exercise. What about 20%, 25% of the population still smoke?
yeah.
And of course they're picking up the vapes as well in that as well. But anyway,
But the previous administration were, in the trying to sort of create a situation where if you were of a certain age, you would never be able to buy tobacco.
yeah,
That didn't
yeah.
come off, did it? But
No, 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 rather bizarre, but no, I suppose that's one way of stamping out consumption of tobacco and cigarettes. But again, something like that would ultimately bring an end to duty on tobacco and cigarettes, except obviously that any that's imported, which would be subject to the normal customs duties, I suppose.
coming back to the beer, a
Yeah.
penny off. How much do you pay for a pint these days? A fiver at least?
A fiver, £4.50, £5.
It doesn't even show, does it?
No, you may as well put the penny in the charity box.
Yeah, it's totally crazy.
Just pure gesture.
Yeah. Now, as far as private schools are concerned, once again, it's champagne socialist politics, isn't it? In terms of the fact that they're withdrawing some of the allowances that the schools have had and applying VAT.
It is. I mean, there are two interesting aspects to that. The government denies that this will bring a further influx of pupils of students to state schools, which I think is a little naive. And secondly, if the UK had still been in the EU, they wouldn't have been able to do that. They wouldn't have been able
Really?
to. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be difficult to take to court, but it's a rather petty socialist gesture, in my view. It will it will get money. Also, interestingly enough, I believe private schools will be charged business rates
Yeah.
for some of their activities. So
Yeah.
it's not just the VAT. There'll be a business rate. It's vindictive and rightly or wrongly, private schools seem to give a better standard of education. I'm sure there are people who will say I'm talking rubbish, but I think they do, and it will drive more people ultimately into the state sector, which is already swamped and cannot cope with pupils and is looking for more teachers. So a bit counterproductive in my view.
Did you see any reference to oil and gas? I didn't pick up on
Uh,
that one.
but no, 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 I didn't. They are going to obviously with Scotland in mind, they're going to continue to support the oil and gas industries, which are still vital to
Mm.
Scotland. So they've not been they're not punishing oil and gas. And I think another reason why they're not doing that is, of course, that bringing clean, renewable energies and so on will take longer and will be more costly, and they won't meet their targets. The UK, as will most other countries, won't meet their targets. So I think they're holding fire on that one. They don't want to. They don't want to pour the baby out with the bathwater, if I can put it like that.
And of course, we both agree that the major oil companies, um, with their dividend income based on their shares, produce a lot of money for pension schemes and things like that. I mean, that's the old golden goose, isn't it?
Hugely, and as they're clobbering pensions in other ways at the moment, the last thing that government wants to do is to slow down the flow of income to
Yeah.
those people, for which the oil and gas industry are a vital contributor.
Winter fuel allowance, well, we knew about that. They'd already done that before the budget, and I really fear for a lot of pensioners in the UK in the winter.
Well, I think that's right. It's a rather petty move, and
Yeah.
I think in some ways they regret it because of the impact and the opposition they've had from many of their own members and natural supporters, Tony. So I think it was a rather clumsy move.
But they won't back down, will they?
They
I
were
don't
they
think.
won't back down. Yes, pride comes before the fall.
And I think somebody did an analysis, and it was about 4,000 people potentially could die if it's a hard winter. And
That's right. Yeah.
but you can be comforted by the fact that if you can survive until next May, the triple lock will mean that your old age pension will go up by 4.1%. But the question is if you can survive.
If you can survive, yeah, yeah, yes. Let's hope it's not a hard winter. That's all I can say.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing mentioned about wealth tax as such, although the non-dom concessions have been knocked for six, haven't they?
Well, they have, and I think this is an interesting one. And again, they've not fully elaborated what they're going to do, but they've abolished. Well, they've abolished the previous government abolished the non-dom. The current government has done that. It will mean a move of some wealth outside of the UK to elsewhere. And one of the things I'm looking for is whether they will seek to tax the gains on that wealth.
mm,
as it's moved. What you might call a deemed disposal, even though you continue to hold the assets. I think that's something that could come in, but at the same time, they're also going to bring in some measure where if you maintain your assets in I'll use the word approved forms of investment in the
yeah.
UK, you will get some concessions, but on that, but they've got to elaborate that for the future.
And we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? The other thing that is a lot of people I don't think realise is that you're not off the hook if you leave the UK and
No,
go
no, you're
elsewhere
not.
for 10 years. 10
That's
years.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. That came under the last government, and I think the Crown dependencies and the people involved in economic developments are a little naive. They may be able to offer this and that and the other incentive, but it misrepresents if those people coming and buying houses or businesses or whatever are still in the clutches of the HMRC up to 10 years.
Mm, mm,
So I think it's a point I'd like to make is that the when the UK sneezes, the Crown dependencies catch a cold
mm,
because they are very dependent on the UK, much as they may like to protest otherwise.
mm, very much so. Um, Business rates. Now this was interesting because I didn't think anything had happened, but in actual fact, currently I believe you get a 75% reduction on
Yeah,
business rates if you're in a certain category. Now
correct.
that has now been revised. And I was listening to a guy on the radio this morning, and he said that his business rates bill is going to go up from 10,000 a year to 25,000 a year because of this reduction that they've made.
Yeah, yes. Again, I've not read the small print on this yet, but it's there are going to be business rate rises. It depends sort of where you are, for example, the sort of business you're in, and so on.
Mm,
So you've got to look at it on a case by case basis.
mm,
But there will certainly be rises for some businesses, uh, and of course it means that more businesses, where they can, will go to merely an online presence rather
mm.
than an establishment basis.
Yeah. The thing is, they appear to hate business, don't they? Whatever they say, they hate business.
Well, they do. I mean, they've been making some gestures to business as part of the lead up to the election, and also this big investment seminar with so-called leaders of business. But they, they they do need them, but I don't think they're that fond of them at the end of the day. Uh,
And they were saying, Robert, that none of the front bench of the government have had any business experience at all.
no, no. Well, they've come up through think tanks, through the world of academia,
Mm.
through local government. They've never had any exposure to the harsh realities of running a business. And you might say that for quite a lot of the states members in Guernsey as well, but that's another story.
Oh, right. Let's get let's get
Sorry.
on to air passenger duty before we get too controversial.
Yeah.
That's going to go up by £2 a shot if it's going to be an economy. But
Yeah.
in your case, with the jet, your own jet,
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, my jet. Yes.
it's about £2,500 every time you get it out the hangar.
Well, that's right. And obviously, I know Guernsey has a register, plane register and so on. But if you're going to or from the UK, you will be captured by
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So best thing with your jet in Guernsey, don't fly near the UK.
Yeah, in actual fact, it's £450 per passenger.
Sure, yeah, yeah,
But do you get? Well, we obviously don't know the answer to this one, but
yeah.
do you get bash for it two ways, landing and
Yes,
takeoff?
you do. Yeah, yes, you do.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's going to
yeah,
make things quite
yeah,
expensive, isn't
yeah.
it?
Yes, because it's the same with all air passenger duty. If you ever look at the details on on the ticket. You
Yeah,
get one for
the
going, one for
breakdown.
return. You'll see them both. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems to me that we could see um, borrowing topping £3 trillion in the not too distant future. It's about 2.7 at the moment, isn't it?
It is, and I mean, if you go back to the 1970s, the only financial market that did well in the 1970s was the UK government bond market, the gilts market.
Mm.
To that extent, the city likes Labour for that alone, and it will mean that interest rates will not come down, in my view, much more. They might go to 4%, but I don't think they'll go much below that because the government has to attract overseas buyers of government bonds as well, and they have to give a very attractive a premium rate of interest to attract overseas investors in UK government bonds. And I suspect they will be, as the borrowing goes up, they'll be increasingly reliant on overseas investors. I remember in the 70s, at the time of the oil, they brought out a number of issues specifically targeted at Middle Eastern
Mm.
investors, for example. So they will be increasingly reliant on overseas investors to prop up the bond market and prop up the pound.
Part of it is fake, though, isn't it, in terms of the Bank of England relationship with the government over gilts, as a
Well,
result of
that's right.
quantitative easing.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's a cozy relationship. The bonds were issued, and the Bank of England printed money to buy them up.
Yeah.
Or they did. They bought other assets from institutions and swapped them for gilts. I mean, quantitative easing, I call it the river of no return.
Mm.
And in order to try to unlock or ease quantitative easing, they're paddling against the tide. So you have to put twice as much energy and twice as much money and resources into it. It's going to be a long upriver journey.
But is it the government effectively paying itself
Yes.
interest?
Well, it is. I mean, you may say the Bank of England is independent, but
Yeah.
that's a sort of legal fiction, if I can put it to you like that. But yeah, yes, it's the Bank of England can print money, it can withdraw money, and as long as it has investors who are confident in the government bond market, it can do what it likes, basically.
And all at the government's behest.
Yep.
I mean, I don't believe it's independent.
Yeah. The only independence in inverted commas is in setting interest rates,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
in fact, interest rates, and you write a book about it. Interest rates are dictated by markets
Mm.
ultimately, and supply and demand for government bonds.
And
And
Robert, the quantitative easing dates back to the 2008 financial crisis or something.
that that's right, because the Bank of England brought interest rates down to, what was it, 0.1% or something
Yeah.
at one time, and this was to ease the pressure on the international banks, and that involved also issuing a huge number of bonds for which the Bank of England printed money to buy them, and they've been sitting on about, I think it's about 800 billion
Mm.
of goods, which obviously they're now going to have to sell off gradually into the market. And although that wasn't mentioned, I suspect some of that will also generate more cash
Yeah.
as well, as they sell it off. So there is some headroom there.
So more money for public servants, wage increases.
Exactly. And there doesn't seem to be much. pressure to reduce the number of public sector workers. I'm
No.
afraid. In fact, I think it will increase as the government itself directly quote invests in infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, we've got a few minutes left. I know you want to talk about the Guernsey budget. I know you want to talk about means of bridging the gap. So
Yeah.
over to you.
Well, yeah. Well, yes. I mean, the Guernsey budget is it has come at an inconvenient time for the its caretaker government. Um, Trott is putting forward income tax as a sort of temporary move. He's not done it on
So
a
did
van.
Pitt. So did Pitt.
Yeah, yeah. So did Pitt. Yes, I think Pitt will be remembered long after
Trot.
Trott, but that's that's another matter of debate. And he's trying to pitch it as a temporary move, and all be right in 2 or 3 years' time. He will have ridden off into the political sunset
Yeah.
by that time, if one believes what he says. And there've been about 18 amendments put forward, everything from reducing the number of civil servants to reducing the budgets. One of the more interesting ones, I have to say, is Charles Parkinson's bringing in territorial corporation tax.
Mm.
Now, I did mention earlier that the OECD is looking, certainly for the Western countries, to bring in a minimum level of corporation tax, which is causing some angst in Ireland, among other places. And
Yeah, yeah.
they're looking at 15%. Now, I think Guernsey should grasp the nettle on that and introduce territorial income tax. Yeah, they may start at 12.5, moving up to 15%. And the OECD measures say it should at a minimum be levied on companies registered in that jurisdiction with a turnover of 834 billion, which is huge. I think the corporation tax level should be brought down to perhaps 50 million, something like that. Now, I think territorial corporation tax would certainly alleviate quite a lot of the Guernsey's problems.
Yeah.
How much it impacts the financial services industry, I'm honestly not sure. I've not been chanced to know. But that, to me, is one of the more sensible ones. Grasp the nettle and do it now. So I think that's a good one. But there's some fairly bizarre ones. And the trouble is, and I don't think all the deputies understand this, they agree to one, they don't agree to another. You're going to have a real fruit cocktail of measures,
Yeah.
which don't make overall coherence. So I think the states have got itself into a real pickle over tax. And as for GST, I mean, I am broadly in favour of GST, but I question the competence of the Guernsey financial administration to implement it. Certainly implement it within a couple of years. I remember talking to Peter Ferbrash when he came over here when they were pushing this, and he said, "Well, we've been told by the civil servants it can be in within 2 years." I thought, more fool you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm in favour of GST, but I really doubt the competence of the civil service to implement it.
But you're being in favour means that also that you would want to see concessions made on income tax,
Yeah. Yes.
and particularly for people on lower incomes.
Yes, exactly. No, I thought the overall measure was very good. It wasn't carried, unfortunately, but my big question was the competence on implementation. That and also I mean, they obviously need to change the systems. They've got big problems, I understand, with this 10-year IT upgrade deal they did with a company called Aquila, was it, or which is halfway through now, and that would mean resetting that additional cost there. So I really don't think they've thought through the implementation in a very analytical way.
And of course, I don't see how you can establish how much money you've got in the kitty when you don't process the tax returns.
That's right. And also, when you don't have international accounting standards, you don't have
Yeah,
a profit loss or balance sheet. I
yeah.
mean, the this was supposed to there was a motion in 2012, 2011, something like that, to bring international accounting standards. Well, the current Treasury Minister will have long retired, I suspect, before it comes in. We could do with it here as well, but obviously that won't come here until it comes in Guernsey. But you can't run the finances properly without an adequate profit loss and balance sheet. It's like running a large sweet shop otherwise, cash in, cash out.
We've run out of time. It's
Have we?
been a pleasure to talk to you as ever. Thank you very much for sparing me some time today. Always interesting to hear your views on these sorts of things. So,
Well, you're very kind, Tony. Well, we'll speak soon then.
yeah,
Take
you
care.
take care. Thanks, Robert. Cheers.
Bye. Bye. Bye.